Welcome to another episode of The Art of Feminine Negotiation, otherwise known as HERsuasion. And today I am really excited to be introducing you to Joanna Shea. Welcome, Joanna. It's so great to have you here.
Thank you for having me.
And we're going to be talking about some expert negotiating tips. And Joanna is certainly an expert. She's got almost 20 years negotiating experience across multiple sectors and industries. She's led over $2 billion worth of negotiated contract work. She studied conflict and negotiations, including Harvard's Negotiation Mastery Program. And she's currently managing partner of the Negotiations Collective. So Joanna, I thought let's start about talking about negotiation styles. What is a negotiation style? Why is it important? And how do you recognize your own style?
Well, the funny part about this is it's the self-awareness, right? I like using the Thomas Kilmann conflict mode instrument. So he's got 5 ways to break down your personality when you're negotiating, right? There's competing, there's collaborating, there's compromising, avoiding, and accommodating. Now, in like the workshops that we do, we've got a case study that kind of zeroes in on what style you are right out of the bat. But for those that are listening, if you do want to do a self-identification, that you can go online to Thomas Kilmann's website, pay a small fee, and you can do self-identification. But being aware of your style is really critical because you need to know when to adjust. Because say you're a natural competitor, right? Like your natural propensity is to win at all costs, right? And if you're a negotiator where, you're front facing to people that you're only going to see one time ever, and you're not going to establish a relationship, then like have at her. I mean, prepare to establish a relationship, but I mean, a reputation. But again, if your objective is to win and it's a one-time thing, go for it. Be the competitor, slap on a Teflon suit, right? And get ready to go. But that's
and
not
why
often.
don't we spend a second just because some of our listeners probably aren't familiar with those styles. So if you can just spend a minute talking about those 5 different styles, what do they mean, right? What are some of the indicators that you might fall into one of those categories?
Yeah, you bet. So a competitor is assertive and they're uncooperative typically, right? They pursue their own concerns. They're very, very power oriented. That's their goal. And they use whatever power they have to win. Honestly, Trump is a power negotiator. He's a competitor. He wins at all costs, right? And he also had the might of the US behind him. So he could behave the way he did. By all means. Competitors have a great ability to argue, and they rank, they politic, and they go for money. And they're considered an individual, and they might think of themselves as someone who's standing up for their own rights. They strongly defend their position, and they believe that they're correct no matter what, and they just want to win. So what I've described doesn't sound like a very maybe flattering personality, but like in some organizations, that's what you need. Like you were an attorney, you represented clients. They hired you because your nickname, the Barracuda, you were excellent at your job. They needed you to be a competitor. They hired you to win. So there's pros and cons, right? And
although it's interesting on that, because I love that. It's funny because I definitely was in that mode. I think it wasn't my natural style. I thought it was because I was able to do it really well. That style came more, I think, after I started the practice of law. You come out a 20-year-old fresh-faced and in this male-dominated industry, and you're like, oh my God, they are not going to take me seriously until I really step up my game. But I've actually come to really sort of switch over and step away. Trial is a little different. When you're in that advocacy mode, it's more the gloves are off. But when I'm negotiating, I really now, as you know, I created the Art of Feminine Negotiation because I have really come to believe that old, more traditional competitive model, I think that's how most people looked at negotiation. And I actually think you can get way better results through some of the other styles. So carry on. I love this. This is great.
And I 100% agree with you. It's just like being an expert negotiator, you kind of like, the book 99 Rabbits, multiple personalities. You have to be able to have multiple personalities, right? Like you've got to take a hat on and switch and adjust back and forth. So the next one is accommodating. This individual is typically unassertive and very, very cooperative. They are the complete opposite of a competitor, right? This negotiator often neglects their own concerns to satisfy the concerns of others.
Absolutely.
Right? They're a self-sacrificer.
Yep.
Now, these negotiators take the form of selfless generosity and charity.
Yeah.
Okay? They're often considered weak. They tend to obey another party's orders, and they often yield to the other party's point of view.
I love that. And I think it's worth mentioning that, and I don't know if you agree with this, I think a lot of women, certainly a lot of my clients, come in from that place.
Oh, I know, women. We're so bad.
Deep conditioning to be the nurturer, the caregiver, the martyr, right? I mean, we have to be selfless, or else we're going to be seen as the barracuda, which they don't want. So I'm really glad you pointed that out.
Well, and it's a double-edged sword, right? Because if women, when we flex hard. But there's also our stereotypes where we're so supposed to be nice and cordial and friendly and be the glue of the team. So when you don't act like an accommodator in a negotiation, a lot of typically men on the other side, subject to how it's brought up, it's not reacted to very well. Right. And like you and your business and HERsuasion with Negotiations Collective, we do have clients that we coach. And I actually have a number of professional women, and that's the crux of the coaching. Is like self-advocacy. Let's line this up. Let's be strategic. Let's get you what you want. But
and do you find you hit both? It's interesting you say that, because I find in my coaching work as well, with women in particular, we either have the accommodator because they're so conditioned to avoiding conflict, or we get what I call the overcompensation, which is where I was with the barracuda, where they're totally competitive, and the coaching is all around allowing them to tap back into that vulnerability and use that to their advantage. Have you had that? It's that either or, right? Extreme.
Absolutely. Like the indignant tone, right? Like now in businesses, the wonderful focus on diversity and inclusion, right? And it is important to talk about that. And it is important to have us be represented and different races. But it's how you bring it up. Because at the end of the day, you're still in business and it needs to help the bottom line. And it will, because diversity does make us better and think differently, and groupthink goes away. But it's how you advocate. And that stomping the foot, indignant, my way or the highway, right? Like people just leave the room. It's like, come on.
Absolutely.
All right. So we've talked about competing. We've talked about accommodating. Now, this is one, unfortunately, some women fall into as well. And men, actually. What am I saying? It's both. But it's the avoider, right? They're unassertive and uncooperative. Like they do not want to engage, right? Like they'd rather go clean a toilet. Right? They don't pursue their own concerns. Nor do they deal with other parties. They avoid conflict, and they take this as a form of like diplomatic sidestepping. Or maybe postponing the issue till a better time, or aggravatingly enough until maybe somebody else can deal with it. Middle level management. Right.
And I find so much of that, and again, I'd be interested in your experience, is based on how we frame conflict, right? And how we frame negotiate. That's why I'm on such a mission to reframe the words negotiation and conflict. Because I think when we see negotiation as being all about the conflict, I think that's where we get a lot of that avoidance from. I don't want the conflict. I don't want to deal with this, right? So I'm not going to accommodate because I don't want to give up. I'm just going to keep procrastinating and try and pass it off.
No, it is a tactic though.
True.
Right?
Very good point.
Absolutely. I mean, people get so frustrated because you'll like throw an offer across the table. You're waiting. You're like, I sharpened the pencil. Like I went to the wall. I did the value analysis. This totally makes sense. But it doesn't make sense for the other party, and it's a waste of their time. To even engage, so they avoid.
Yeah, really good point. And again, for the listeners out there, pay attention to that, because that avoider, that can be a strategy, that can be a tactic that people are going to be using. You see it a lot in politics, and be wary of it in your business deals as well. Great point, Joanna. I love that.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I've definitely used that tactic. You avoid long enough, and then guess what? The number comes back bigger and fatter. Right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. So again, compete, accommodate, avoid. Next is collaborate. Now, this individual, and this is what I prescribe to, but again, I can adjust.
Yeah.
Is being assertive but cooperative.
Yeah.
Right. I listened to a podcast, the Negotiation Ninja, and Mark was interviewing Chris Voss, and he comes from a very, very different background. He's very skilled, right? But like in his world, you don't get a win-win.
Yeah.
Right? Like you die.
Yeah.
If the other side wins. And so I do open up, and maybe he would think I'm soft, but I really like prescribing to win-win.
Yeah.
Right. I think that there's value to be had on both sides of the equation. And I was listening to the podcast, and Chris was like, well, if anybody comes to me and says you're looking for a win-win, he's like, I'm going to be looking for the knife to be jammed in my back. And I said, well, I get where he's coming from, but unless again, this is a one-off transaction.
I'm with you. That book bothered me for that reason, right? And it's funny, it worried me a little bit, to be honest. And again, great skill set, not taking anything away from it.
Yeah.
The fact that it had such mass public appeal reinforces that message that negotiation is all about the conflict. It's all about that competitive edge. And the fact that we're putting that out there as message for the masses, that's one thing in a hostage negotiating situation. I get it. I get why that, because you're right. It's not a win-win situation. You need those hostages out alive. And if you can, you're not going to be able to give them what they're asking for, presumably, but to be applying that as a life model, like even the beginning of the book, he was talking about, going to the negotiator, Harvard negotiation program, which you're familiar with.
Yeah, which I'm doing right now. Yeah.
And he was so proud of himself because he thought he had won the negotiation with them because he refused to answer any of their questions. Like that's not a great recipe for life. I mean, that's not an effective way to communicate or build business relationships or personal relationships. I just think it's such a dangerous model to look at life. Negotiation is life or death in our real lives. So,
well, imagine you're trying to merge two companies and you put an offer on the table, and then the company that you might be doing a mergers with, like, asking questions, like, no, exactly. No information for you. Nope. Oh, this is going to go really well.
Or even think about your kids, right? I mean, all of life is a negotiation. So imagine if your kids come looking for a win and you're like, I'm looking for the knife in my back. I mean, not a healthy recipe for good relationships. But anyway.
Again, like, here's this book, like, Stemming Conversation. I will say, though, right now, so Michael Wheeler is a very well written. He's just lovely. Yeah. He is the person who's running the course. It's all on video, so I don't actually get to interact with him. But at the beginning of the course, they started us off with this payoff game, right? So I'm talking about the knife in your back.
Yeah.
And they make you play, and you can, if you play a circle position. So this is for the listeners, just about, like, being too nice, right? Like, if you know it's only going to be a one-time thing and your goal is to get more money, you need to be a competitor. If you know it's going to be a multi-transactional piece, but then there's only going to be one last transaction, and again, your goal is to get the most money, that's maybe where you might actually put the knife in the back, but you're never going to see them again and engage. Right? But okay, sorry, I digress. So back to the collaborator. So this style involves an attempt to work with others and find a solution that fully satisfies them. So this is a lot of questioning, lots. This is to get to collaboration, like in deals, let's just talk salary negotiation or role negotiation. You've got a lot of questions to ask, you have a lot of research to do before you can start proposing a win-win that works for your organization and that works for you, right? Or works for the organization and your own.
Yeah.
So this style may be between two or more parties where they explore disagreements and learn from each other. So collaborator is high on cooperative and high on assertive.
Yeah.
And the last one, and again, this is the Thomas Kilmann model, I'm citing his research, is compromising.
Yeah.
So this person's both moderately assertive and cooperative. And the goal is to find an expedient, mutually acceptable solution. So this one's got a time crunch.
Yeah.
Right. There's a deadline. And so they just want to come to, the compromiser might actually miss a lot of value.
Yeah.
If they don't do the collaborative style, that's because the compromiser's in a rush. They want to get it done. And they're missing all the information in the background.
Yep. Dealt with lots of them in my life, that's for sure.
Right. And like, that's tough.
Yeah.
Because there's so much more on the table, but because somebody above said this is the time, they're not pushing back and saying, well, hold on. If we take a little bit more time, I think we can get so much more.
Yeah.
Right. And that's another thing for negotiations, is that even though you might be representing your company to an external source, your also toughest negotiation might be internally.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Right. Like,
so glad you said that. I often say that. I think your first and most important negotiation is always going to be negotiating your mindset, right? I mean, and as women in particular, I find that's the case, although this applies certainly to both genders, but that get over any of those limiting beliefs that you have as well, walking into that negotiation, any feelings of not enough or imposter syndrome or less than, you negotiate your mindset, choose how you want to show up, right? Like really get intentional about who do I want to be when I walk through that door, or when I turn on that Zoom, or however you're doing your negotiation.
Yeah, I'm coaching this one woman, and she's, oh my gosh, she's so bright. I think she's going to go to the moon in healthcare here in BC. She's a doctor, and the politics are hard. They wear you down, right? A lot of the reasons why you don't see a lot of women way up in the nosebleed sections is we just don't like. Can I swear on podcasts?
Yeah, you can knock yourself out.
Sorry.
I had to register whether it was going to be family appropriate or not, so you're good.
My first time, but we just don't like bullshit.
Yeah.
Right? Like, cut to the point.
Yeah.
Like, what's the goal? What do you want to get done? And then let's figure out a way and navigate through the personalities. And so she was really getting beaten down.
Okay.
And it was like, okay, we need to reframe you. And she really liked the show Game of Thrones.
Oh, yeah.
I was like, okay, we're going to have some fun with this. You're officially Varys, right? Like this character who he just sits back and he pokes.
Yeah.
But he pokes in a constructive way that makes people think.
Yeah.
And then he'll poke again. And so her gentle movements throughout, different associations, different hospitals, different health boards, it's slow, right? Like you get this, it's the coaching, but you can see the wave starting to get bigger.
Yeah.
And it's moving in the right direction. And when she gets frustrated, I snap her back and say, again, mindset.
Yeah.
Like, this is supposed to be fun.
Yeah.
Right? We all work so that we can live.
Yeah.
We don't live to work.
Yes.
So like reframe. And it's going good. Like I can't wait to see.
Yeah. And you touched on that idea about that, but sitting back and asking, like, I think people often underestimate the power of questions, right?
Oh, gosh.
Know how to strategically use questions. And again, that old model, I think people believe that the person who's talking the loudest and the longest is the person who's winning. And the opposite is true. I mean, if you find, and I often say this to my clients, if you're in a negotiation and you find you're the one doing all the talking, stop, stop, drop and roll and just button up and take a breath and literally sit back and start thinking of strategic questions that you can ask. You're going to get a lot more value out of that, right? So
and sometimes, like, when you get triggered, right, when your emotions get triggered in a negotiation, that's when you start to talk too much. And that's when you start defending your position versus still asking questions. So I actually, for years, when I know I'm about to engage in something that's going to get, pretty nasty or could potentially get pretty nasty, I put a hair elastic on my wrist.
Okay. The old snap.
Yeah. And I snap. Like when I start feeling myself getting like unobjective.
Yeah.
it just crack
I
it.
love that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Snap, you
Like,
bet. That's
okay,
a
we're
great
friends.
mindset check. Yeah, I
Yeah.
love it. I love it.
Mhm.
And you've already talked a bit about it, but how is it important? Because I think, well, first, how do people recognize what their style is? Like, other than taking a quiz, what would you say are some indicators about that? And why is it important? And why is it important to be flexible? Because I think a lot of people go, oh, that's my style, I need to stick to it. And it's one of the things, even training young lawyers who came on as associates in my law practice for years, always like, you know what, you need to be able to get the eye of the tiger, but you can't be eye of the tiger all the time. Great negotiators are going to have the flexibility to adopt to different styles as is called for in any situation. What are your thoughts on that, Joanna?
Well, for anyone who's listening and like really does want to dig in, you know, Cindy or I do training, but there's the Thomas Kilmann survey online. Or how do you play Monopoly?
Oh, I love that. That's
Right?
good. Yeah.
Like what personality were you when you played Monopoly? Did you
Yeah.
compete? Did you need to win? Did you
Yeah.
kind of collaborate and kind of negotiate your positions? Did you compromise? Did you avoid and just hated playing? Or
Yeah.
did you accommodate, right? So think of your Monopoly personality. And
That's
then,
so good.
right?
Yeah, I love it.
Yeah. And then when you and I were chatting on Clubhouse, so again, I've had the luxury in my negotiations of 9 out of 10 times getting to know the company and their representatives
Yeah.
before I really start to dig, right?
Yeah.
So lunch never hurts. Go
Yeah.
for a walk, go for a coffee, couple of phone calls, pepper them with questions.
Yeah.
And you need to really pay attention to how they react because you're
Good
trying to
point.
find out what their goals are, but
Yeah.
you also want to see where they get their backup,
Yeah. So
right?
smart. Yeah.
Right. And
Absolutely.
so if you can take the time, you should, and again, like LinkedIn, do the due diligence, find
Yeah.
out who you have in common with the person and call them and say, hey, personality, like what's this person like?
Yeah.
How are they like to deal with? And do your due diligence.
And I'm so glad you mentioned about LinkedIn, because today there's no excuse. Back when I started 30 years ago, it was tougher to do that. It was still necessary to do. But now, my gosh, with the internet, you have just a plethora of information available at your fingertips by just doing your homework, right? Do that.
Yeah, you have no excuse.
Yeah.
These days. If somebody's like, I didn't know, well, you didn't prepare.
Yeah.
Unless you're dealing with somebody who's manic, then good luck.
Yeah.
But I shouldn't joke about mental health, but I have negotiated with those types before.
Yeah, brings an interesting new challenge and perspective to a negotiation for sure.
Oh,
So
goodness.
how do you recognize the other party's style? Like, other than leaving aside your homework and prep, which is great, but when you're in a negotiation, let's say something comes up spontaneously, what are some tips that you use in your coaching practice to help?
Well, the competer is really easy to flag.
Yeah.
Right? Like whatever you say, it's a no. Or I want this, but I want this, what I want this. They always go straight back to what they want. Yeah. And they're gonna get what they want, or they're gonna walk away, right? Like that's they're gonna win, they're gonna win, they're gonna win.
Yeah.
An avoider is also easy to spot because you probably won't spot them. Right? Or they're gonna take a really conciliatory tone with you and say, yeah, I hear what you're saying. It's just not the right time. And this is a big move for salary and role negotiations at companies.
Yes, gosh. Having done collective bargaining for many years.
Oh, Jesus. Yeah. Like, yeah, you're great at your job. You're doing such a good time, but now's not the time. And then they just shoot you off and avoid the confrontation.
Yeah.
The collaborator is also easy to spot because they're going to start asking questions.
Yeah.
Right? They're going to dig. They're going to educate you. And in educating themselves, you're going to educate yourself, right? Collaborating and accommodating are different.
Yeah.
So you got to watch for those two, right? If they start yielding to your position very easily, that is an accommodator, which means good for you.
Yeah.
have fun and sharpen your desires, because you can probably push that boundary a little bit more. And then the compromiser, they ask quick questions, but they just want to get it done.
Yeah, love it. And it's interesting when you say about the accommodator. One thing, again, because back, in my Barracuda day, if I knew I had an accommodator, I would push to get as much as you can. And now I'm still much more really intentional as well about recognizing, okay, obviously for my client, I'm going to, get what we can out of this that we need. And at the same time, also be looking, what are some things that we can give in return? Because, that aren't going to cost us, right? But that may still be a value to the other side, because unless, as you've mentioned a number of times, unless this is a one-off, accommodators may give you what you want in the moment, but there's going to be resentment. There's going to be some consequences. There's going to be some relationship issues that come from that. So it's a great thing to really be aware of, learning them. I'm so glad you're going through these styles. I don't think we've done actually a podcast interview on this issue as well. So really glad you've raised it. So
well, thank you, Thomas Kilmann. Yeah, right. Yeah. Like I prescribe to this piece.
Yeah.
Well, and on that note, right, it's the behavioral psychology. Right? Like it's really, I mean, at a negotiating table, you have IQ, but you have EQ.
Yeah.
And you can have a quant at the table.
Yeah.
Like absolute genius, but oh my goodness, they will blow that up if they don't recognize who they're dealing with, what they want, and quite frankly, the ego.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Like,
and the beauty is being able to be more fluid between them, because that certainly those sort of 5 negotiating styles, that was for a long time, that's everything that was taught about, here are the styles, you fit into one, you decide which you're going to use. Yeah. And the reason, my sort of our fit model is that, assertiveness, rapport building, empathy, flexibility, intuition, and trust, which I like to think of as it's a merger of a bunch of yes, you have the A for assertiveness. You're able to be assertive. You're able to stand your ground, and assertive not being the same as aggressive, but also you are collaborating. You're also trying to give some accommodation so that you're building that relationship, finding those outside the box. So sort of reframing how we even look at styles. And I'd love to chat with you about, because negotiating at work can be challenging for a lot of people. And I think women in particular. So whether using those styles or just generally, what tips would you have for, managing personalities in the workplace, negotiating that sort of minefield?
Well, you said it at the beginning, and we've talked about it. It's your mindset.
Yeah.
Right? I had this one situation with this guy. And I had to go 99% to get him to yield to 1%. And I tried for probably 6 months. And finally, after that, I just let out a whole bunch of swears and said, Kate, I'm shifting gears. I'm officially getting him removed from the company. Enough. This ego, this manic Jekyll Hyde, I can't handle it anymore. Yeah. And I tried. And I was, for those at work, get access to your HR business partner.
Yeah.
I can't say all of the ones I've engaged with are great.
Yeah.
But
that was diplomatic.
Yeah. But I have had the pleasure of working with some excellent ones. Yeah. Right. And then they are another source to help you negotiate and navigate those personalities.
Yeah.
Right? Because they too should be speaking to these individuals that are a potential bombastic, acidic, though smart, maybe well networked, and that's why they're still there at the organization. But you've got to pull levers. And again, it's the mindset. Always keep the problem in mind and try and not deal with the personalities.
Yeah.
Or sorry, you have to deal with the personalities.
Yeah.
But think of them as
soft on people.
Think of it as and these are professionals, these are your colleagues, but if you keep your head safe in a space that it's this is a game, this is what I'm getting paid for, you can stay really, really objective and pragmatic.
Yeah.
Right? We're all chess pieces.
Yeah. And really, again, coming with that from that perspective of, who am I going to show up as when dealing with these people? And if you've got somebody who's really bombastic, the bully in the workplace, I find often just call out the behavior, right? And our tendency, most people, is to get reactive back. Well, I shouldn't say that. I think a lot of women faced with that personality, well, a lot of people, but male and female, faced with that personality, really just sort of retreat, become avoiders. And it's impossible to get effective work done in that environment. Or we get that reactive, as you said, the ego gets in the house and we have that reactivity, right? As opposed to, like, I've often found it very, once I switch gears out of the barracuda mode, I would often, even if I'm dealing with a lawyer on the other side who's being really aggressive and it clearly intentionally trying to actually physically intimidate and dominate the room. And I would just go, what, are you seriously trying to physically intimidate me right now? And it just takes all the way. Sometimes just calling out a tactic can be all it takes to sort of really shift that dynamic as well. And practice and have some of those lines, if you will, in advance, or an exit line to say, do you know what? We all deserve to be treated with respect, and I want to be able to treat you with respect, but I can't do that right now because the way you're showing up has me really reactive. So I'm going to take a step away and let's have this conversation when you're able to show up in a way that's a little more productive and professional. That's a soft way where you're really chastising somebody, but in a way where you've said you deserve to be treated with respect. So hard for them to call you on it, right?
Yeah, I was in a situation recently working with the board of a private company and trying to stay constructive. One of the gentlemen was speaking about a colleague and used like a whole bunch of really not flattering terms. And I kind of looked at him and I was like, so first, great that you feel comfortable enough to say something like that in my presence. But two, you're a leader. And if that's how you're talking about a colleague of yours, you've got a problem. And I'm going to assume it's not a personality problem because that's unprofessional.
Yeah.
But if it's a performance problem, then you as the leader need to address it and not use those types of terms to describe her.
Beautiful.
Like inappropriate on all levels.
Yeah.
He's like, like again, if it's a personality problem, figure it out. You're the leader.
But when you take the high road like that, again, even if they're reactive in the moment because they feel embarrassed, or they're going to go away and think about it, and they're
he felt like a boob.
and they're going to replay that you handled it in a way that was still respectful, right? So I think you get a lot more mileage out of that. So
right, and there's the trigger, is like when you're in a room when that shows up. I guess like in terms of HERsuasion, if you've got an end in mind and you still need to solve the problem, you being indignant isn't gonna solve it.
Yes. Yeah. And I love that you raised that about outcomes, because I think so many people forget to keep that in mind, right? On both fronts. I think we have, and also in outcomes, people always just think about the what, right? The matter, the substance here, the focus when you ask them what the negotiation is about, but they ignore the process, right? The means of the negotiation. And perhaps most importantly, they forget to consider with intention, what's the relationship outcome you want out of this particular negotiation? Depending on who you're negotiating with, sometimes saving the relationship is more important than whatever the what is on that particular issue or for that particular negotiation. So really get clarity about the outcomes that you're seeking, because then it's easier to be more intentional, to think outside the box and get creative about making sure you're more likely to get there. It's hard to hit a fuzzy target, right? So
totally. Well, and you just spoke about it being an accommodator right there. Is that if your goal is to just get it signed, then get flexible, touch your toes, and right, like be bendy, be pliable, be malleable, and say yes and thank you.
Yeah, love it.
Yeah.
And Joanna, what are your top 3 negotiating tips? If you would say, if you were going to just sort of close your eyes for a second and think, okay, if I only had, sort of 60 seconds to be able to, I'm giving you don't just have 60 seconds, but if you had to just sort of name your top 3 tips to somebody, your hottest negotiating tips, what would they be?
Well, this is not going to be new to anybody, but don't go in unprepared.
Yes. So important. And
So,
not new, but people overlook it surprisingly often. So love that.
Yeah, I can't remember the author of one of the books, but it was from the PON program on negotiations from Harvard.
Yeah.
But in project management, there's something called RACI. It stands for responsible, accountable, support, informed, consulted.
Yeah.
So when you're running a project, you need to know who the stakeholders are. Because if you run ahead and you don't take into account who's responsible, accountable, keep them all in, you're hooped. You're in big trouble. And I actually take that RACI and I prescribe it to negotiations.
Love it. Yeah.
So I have an Excel spreadsheet, quite frankly, that literally tracks players.
Yeah. I
And
love
people
that.
and personalities and what they're responsible for. And again, that takes time because what I've dealt with has had the luxury of it. But that's the first point.
I love that. And let me just say that Excel sheet, people may, for any of you listeners or viewers out there, if you're going, for ongoing relationships, business relationships, so worth the investment to have that. So worth the investment. I love that tip. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. It's time, and it's a personality due diligence process.
Fantastic.
Right.
Yeah.
So RACI, and I mentioned the book from Pond because he too said something like that, but it was a different acronym.
Yeah.
So, research shows, again, go unprepared, know the players, know the stakeholders and what they're accountable for.
Yeah.
So that's the people side.
Love
and
it.
then there's the data. Right. And I, again, my negotiations, like yours, they're not like one pagers. They're thousands of pages long. So you need to have a process to track your data.
Yeah.
Right. Because you need to keep it organized. And then if your counterparty or counterparties need the most recent information, you are responsible for making sure they get the right data.
Yeah.
So I can't emphasize enough, like personality prepared, your RACI. Second is your data.
Yeah.
And then last is begin with the end in mind.
Yeah. Love that.
Right? Like what do you want this to look like? And also think, that multiple personality piece, what do they want this to look like at the end?
Yes. So important. I mean, I call that the empathy piece. So whatever acronym, it is amazing to me how many people get so focused on what they want as their outcomes that they don't think about the other side. And interestingly, I've seen so many negotiations that go sideways where there's an obvious solution if they would just really take the time to see what each of the other, what the other side wants, because both of them can get what they want and beyond if they would just take a step back and give themselves that perspective. I love that.
Yeah. Or again, and sometimes this can't happen, but sometimes you're not the right fit for the seat.
Yes.
Like if you are the negotiator for your company, check your own ego.
I love that. Yes.
Right? Like, I mean, I talked to you about that on that Clubhouse chat where in one situation, the guy I was dealing with was this big, well-rounded, tall man who wanted nothing to do with me, like looked straight down his nose and was like, hey, toots. Like, and I'm there literally representing almost, $750 million worth of assets, 21 companies. I've got everything in my head, and he would not engage with me.
Yeah.
So I'm like, okay, I'm not going to be able to pass this off because there's too much information in my head, but I need someone to role play for me internally.
Yeah.
So I went to my boss, wonderful gentleman, white male, and said, you need to do this for me. I will sit beside you. I will carry your briefcase, bring your coffee. Like, I know what position I need to make this man across the table feel stronger.
Yes.
And more powerful. And so I checked my ego.
Yeah. That is so important. So
we got it done.
Important.
Yeah. Like it sucked. But
you're right. And I often call ego one of the 7 deadly sins in negotiation, right? And I've got this no fear model. The F is fear, the E is ego, the A is attachment. Don't get so attached to any result that you can't walk away and watch reactivity. But ego, I love that. You were able to shelve your ego in a way to serve, and it's that empathy piece again. you recognize that he needed to feel powerful and to feel stroked and to feel in control. And sometimes giving somebody, even if it's the illusion of that, can be worth its weight in gold if you start, as you say, with the end in mind. Here's the outcome I need. Here's the most effective way to get there. And I don't need to have my ego stroke to be able to get the result that I want. That's beautiful advice. I love that, Joanna.
Thank you.
Yeah. Now, I often say that, well, I always say all of life is a negotiation, but I think a lot of people don't recognize that. So what are some negotiations that people often overlook or don't think of as a negotiation in life, would you say?
Oh, where to go for dinner?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Or with your kids, right?
Your
partner.
Mine's too young to speak up yet, but he'll get there, I'm sure.
Oh, but they're still negotiating. I mean, really, when you think of it, even coming out of the womb in some ways, right? I mean, I just wrote a piece recently about kids. We all need to tap into our inner child, because kids really early learn how to cover that who do I show up? They know when to be the tantrum thrower to get what they want. They know when to be, coy or adorable and loving. They know who to play off each other. Should I go to mom for this? Should I go to dad? Should I play them off each other? It's really quite remarkable to watch that, right?
I know. But like negotiations in life, I mean, every day at work is one.
Yeah.
Right. Because you're building a team.
Yeah.
You're building your reputation. And there might not be a contract written and signed on it, but there is a contract.
Yeah.
You do good. I do good.
Yeah.
I make you look good. You make me look good.
Yeah.
We make the company money. And people need to, again, that's why we're working, right? Like we're corporations aren't in place to be charities.
Yeah.
So keeping that in mind is that the personalities and the politics.
Yeah.
I know so many people hate politics, but that's life.
And it's a negotiation. You've got to be able to negotiate and navigate those relationships. It's an important piece of that puzzle, right? So
and for women in particular, with this being a HERsuasion, is that it's great and all that you're a wonderful, high-performing individual at the company, but don't you dare expect them to just recognize you and reward you.
Yeah.
Because they won't.
I know, that's right. Ask for what you want. Absolutely.
And would be like, wow, there's Betty sitting in a corner working away, making us millions of dollars, and she's never asked for a raise. Great. I'm just going to pocket this for the rest of my life.
So true.
So
yeah, love it. Well, I can't believe how fast the time is going here. So let me ask you, so many amazing nuggets. And again, for our listeners and our viewers out there, make sure this is an episode you're going to want to rewatch it as well to get some of those little nuggets along the way that you've missed. Maybe come with a pad and pen, take some notes, some really valuable tips here on how to negotiate your life, both personally and professionally. So let me ask you, just wrapping up, on what advice would you give on how to break an impasse in negotiations?
So when you're at that impasse, don't close the door. Right? Be like, okay, so obviously I'm here because I think there's value. And obviously you're here because you think there's value, but we're not hitting the right notes right now.
Yeah.
So let's close this off because we've stopped being productive. But I'd like to open this door up in whatever time period works for you. Like sometimes if it's super hot and tense, it might be a month. But if you've got a deadline, it might be 24 hours. But taking a break and leaving it on a constructive note. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
And I love how you frame that, actually, Joanna, because even when it's not such a hard impasse that you need to take that break, I love how you just frame that, look, you're just taking that regroup. And obviously I'm here because this is of interest, right? And there's some value I see in this. Obviously you're here. So let's reframe. What would it take, right, for you? Let's get back, just reminding sometimes that's all it takes, is reminding each other why we get so bogged down in the details where that ego, as you've said, comes in, that reactivity, or attached to a particular result. And just reminding ourselves about that's a beautiful way to approach an impasse. I love that.
Yeah. So. Snap that elastic band.
Yes, exactly.
Don't get pissed off. Yeah. Don't get flushed. Don't have your nostril flare out to the side. Like, try and control your body.
Yeah.
And be genuine, but stay calm.
Love it. Love it. And not to take you off guard, I should have given you a heads up for this. I often ask people that I'm interviewing, what's one of the greatest mindset shifts? Because we've talked a lot about mindset. What's one of the greatest mindset shifts that you've ever had in your life, whether about negotiation or beyond? I always find it interesting how people, their awareness of shifts in their mindset that somehow have taken them on a different path or changed their life.
That's a good one. Well, when you're in deals, or in negotiations, you're working, you're just so darn busy. I'm busy. I'm so busy. I'm so busy. I'm so busy. You're like, oh, I don't have time for this. I don't have time for this. I'm so important. Which is funny because, we're all the leads in our own drama. I think I was negotiating something and I was losing sleep and my blood pressure was up and I was really into it. And my husband's in healthcare, and he came home one day and told me an awful story about what he saw and dealt with and who died that day. And he was like, and he's like, oh, sorry, I'm just talking about me. How was your day? How was the contract negotiation? And I was like, oh,
yeah.
Oh, so maybe that's not answering your question specifically, but it was just, I'm not dealing with life or death.
Mm-hmm.
And I do what I do because I enjoy it.
Yeah.
I love getting a big pile of something and working my way through it and then finding a solution. And it's fun. I do it because it's fun for me.
Yeah.
And so when I get wound up or tense or pissed off, like we all do about things, I always try and come back to the, I'm doing this because I like it. Right.
I love that.
It's work should be fun. I mean, it's not going to be all the time.
Yeah.
I'm not that deluded.
But that's a beautiful mindset issue, because I think for a lot of people, so many people go through life doing what's expected. I think for some people, work isn't fun. And that's beautiful advice as well. Pick something that you are passionate about, that you love doing. You're not going to every moment of every day, but pick something that you love and that you're passionate about. I love that. And keep that perspective. That's great.
Yeah. And if the day job part isn't fun, but look at the fun it provides.
Yeah. Yeah. True.
Right? Reframe. And especially nowadays with COVID, everyone's just so negative.
Yes.
It's that,
Oh, I'm a big fan of reframing,
Yeah. Just begin with your end in mind. Your end in mind is to live a good life and enjoy and find the joy and
Oh, what a beautiful note to end on. Find the joy in life. I love that. What better advice is there than that? Well, Joanna, this has been fantastic. We're going to have to get you back because you've just got so much loads of value. We're going to have to do a follow-up at some point, but thank you so much for being here and being such a fabulous guest.
My pleasure. I think this was really fun.
It was great. And for all our listeners out there, if you want to learn more about Joanna, make sure you can check out Joanna on LinkedIn at Joanna Shea, or check out her website at the Negotiations Collect. So it's negotiationscollective.com. So feel free to check out what they do there. And I'm sure you've all got incredible value from this episode. Make sure if you haven't subscribed to the podcast, please do that. Share this podcast with anyone that you think could get some value, and be sure to share this episode as well. I was going to say with anyone who could get some value, but all of life is a negotiation. So definitely this is a podcast episode that anybody's going to get some value from. And make sure to join our Women on Purpose community group if you haven't done that as well, facebook.com/Women on Purpose community. And that's a wrap for this episode. So until next time, go forth and negotiate your best life on your terms so that you can get more of what you want and deserve in life, from the boardroom to the bedroom.
Thank you.